Hello, my name is Evelyn, and I want to welcome you to our course. Andre and our team at AM Horizons look forward to seeing who you become. As you go through the course sessions, do not hesitate to reach out to us via email or via cell. In today's session, we will be discussing We want to challenge you, engage you, and help you transform your mind. You can engage these sessions at your own pace, retake quizzes until you pass, and dialogue with us via your journals. Don't forget to take your final exam so you can walk away with your certificate. So, if you are ready, we are. So let's get ready to learn. You may now begin your course session. Andre and all of us at AM Horizons look forward to seeing who you become.
Hi, my name is Andre Cohen. I'm the lead trainer for AM Horizons Training Group, and I will be the navigator through this course with you. And so there'll be lots of things that we'll talk about in this course, and so I'd like for you to pay close attention, particularly to the content pieces, as well as the number of assessment pieces that are also in this course. And so I and my staff will be running you through this particular course on sexual harassment and the impacts of a hostile work environment. And so we'll spend some time working through the material, and I'll give you some key points to think about. And so let's get ready and we'll begin. So why is it that we either need to talk about sexual harassment and hostile work environment, and why is it that we actually are talking about it, right? And so one of the things that we know is that systems are great. And for example, I was teaching a class the other day, and I said that communism is a great system. And the students kind of, were shocked by that statement. I said, well, socialism is also a great system, and capitalism is a great system, and a representative democracy is a great system. These are all great systems on paper. But when you add human beings to that mix, those great ideas, those big thoughts become flawed because the people in those systems are flawed. And so why do we need to talk about sexual harassment in the workplace, in a hostile work environment? It is because it is full of people. And as long as there are people with varying and different ideas, there will be the illusion of conflict, and people will behave in ways that sometimes they believe are counterproductive to reaching their goals and allowing other people to reach theirs as well. So sexual harassment. So first of all, there are two things to remember about sexual harassment and a hostile work environment. First of all, we need to understand that when we create a hostile work environment where sexual harassment happens, where racist or gender bias or religious bias is in that environment, it actually decreases human potential, and so it causes human beings to not give their very best. And so as we talk about these things, it's important that we want to make sure that in our work environment that we create an environment where people can live up to their potential. And sexist statements, sexist behavior, bigoted statements, bigoted behavior, these email jokes that oftentimes come in and out of our email boxes cause that human potential to be stifled. And so the first reason we need to talk about sexual harassment and the hostile environment that creates is because it decreases that human potential, and we want to increase that. The second reason that we need to or that we desire or we're compelled to have this conversation is because it is also against the law. And so the Civil Rights Act was signed, which became the platform that did two things. One, it ended segregation, and secondly, it defined discrimination. And so when we talk about these things, it's not just because it's a good thing to do, just because it decreases human potential, but we also don't have sexual harassment in our workplaces because it is against the law. And so we'll get a chance to talk about those laws as well as its impact on human potential. And so as we go through this course, I want you to think about those two things. What of my behavior or the environment that I'm in could be A, against the law, and B, could be stifling human potential.
Unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature constitutes sexual harassment when submission or rejection of this conduct explicitly or implicitly affects an individual's employment, unreasonably interferes with an individual's work performance, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Sexual harassment can occur in a variety of circumstances, including but not limited to the following. The victim, as well as the harasser, may be a woman or a man. The victim does not have to be of the opposite sex. The harasser can be the victim's supervisor, an agent of the employer, a supervisor in another area, a coworker, or a non-employee. The victim does not have to be the person harassed, but could be anyone affected by the offensive conduct. Unlawful sexual harassment may occur without economic injury or discharge of the victim. The harasser's conduct must be unwelcome. It is helpful for the victim to directly inform the harasser that the conduct is unwelcome and must stop. The reasonable person standard. If an unwelcome behavior of a sexual nature causes someone to take offense, it will be judged whether or not it is sexual harassment as if interpreted by a reasonable person. This standard of a reasonable person has arisen from court attempts to interpret what behaviors should reasonably be considered sexual harassment. Since not everyone interprets behaviors in the same way, the court finds that in order to be illegal, the conduct must be severely or pervasively offensive to a reasonable person in a similar circumstance. Under this standard, one-time unwelcome behavior will seldomly qualify as sexual harassment unless it is sufficiently severe as judged by a reasonable person. Sex or power. Most workplace or classroom sexual harassment is based on power and not on romance. although failed romance can lead to sexual harassment. At work and school, some people have authority over others. In these formal power relationships, subordinate employees or students do not always feel free to speak up to a person of higher authority who may have control over their working conditions or academic opportunities. Sexual harassment is illegal, and holding a position of power or authority does not convey the right to break the law. In addition to formal power relationships, informal types of power such as domination through physical size, loud voice, overbearing personality, superior or controlling attitude, or the harasser's position against peers can be intimidating and threatening to some people, discouraging them from speaking up about unwelcome behavior. The following behaviors may contribute to creating a hostile environment. Derogatory comments of a sexual nature or based on gender comments about clothing, personal behavior, or a person's body, sexual or gender-based jokes, or teasing requests for sexual favors, repeated requests for dates, terms of endearment such as honey, dear, sweetheart, babe, references to an adult as girl or boy, doll or hunk, sexual innuendos with stories, grunts, wolf whistles, cat calls, hoots, sucking noises, lip smacking, and animal noises, tales of one's partner's sexual inadequacies, or powerous tales of sexual exploitation, graphic descriptions of pornography, obscene phone calls or emails. The following may contribute to creating a hostile environment: leaning over, invading a person's space, inappropriately touching a person or a person's clothing, accidentally brushing sexual parts of the body, indecent exposure, mooning or flashing, blocking someone's path with the purpose of making a sexual advance, uninvited neck massaging, deliberately touching sexually or brushing up against or pinching, pressing, rubbing up against a person, stalking, grabbing, kissing, posters, cartoons, drawings, calendars, pinups, and pictures of a sexual nature, electronic bulletin boards, computers, graphics of a sexual nature, inappropriate sexually expressive or revealing clothing, knickknacks, and other objects of a sexual nature. Sexual harassment takes a wide variety of forms, some mild and others severe. The behavior may range from a harmful joke to physical assault. Whether a particular behavior is defined as sexual harassment depends largely on whether the behavior is unwelcome to the target, along with the circumstances surrounding those events.
This concept of human potential, one of the things that we know, and it's really funny because Dr. William Glasser coined this concept that my grandmother also had, and I'm not sure how he's making millions off of this, because my grandmother had the very same idea and mantra. And what Dr. William Glasser, well, I'll tell you what my grandmother said. My grandmother said, "The only thing you run are your shoes." What Dr. William Glasser said is that the only thing that we can give someone is information, and outside of that giving them information, we can't make anyone do anything. And so what we start to understand is through Dr. William Glasser's choice theory is that people consistently make choices to do or not to do. One of the biggest lies that is kind of crept into our human psyche, particularly here in the Western world, is this concept of procrastination. People will say, I didn't do this or I didn't accomplish that task because I procrastinated. That is a lie. There is no such thing as procrastination. Procrastination is a smokescreen for something else, which is that someone made a choice not to do the thing that they originally set out to do or that they have responsibility for. And so when we talk about human motivation, we have to understand that people only do what they want to do. However, as leaders, as guides, as responsible folks in our communities or in our workplaces, we have to understand that in order to catch fish, we have to give fish what it is that they desire. If I took a Doritos bag and I put it on the end of the hook, I might not get a big mouth bass. I may not get a sturgeon. I may get a catfish, but I won't get the kind of goals that I'm setting out to get. And so one of the things we have to remember is that when we create an environment that doesn't allow or doesn't attract people to give their very best, that we are actually not only harming ourselves, but we're harming our organization. And so we have to encourage people and in some ways give them what they want. And what is it that people want? They want significance, they want safety, and they want belonging. We'll talk more about that throughout the course, and that'll be a reoccurring thing. You'll hear me keep coming back to that, because if we're stifling people's ability to get what it is that they want, that significance, that safety, and that belonging, then again, we're not helping our organizations. We're actually becoming a stone around the organization's throat. And what that also leads to is a decrease in something that I refer to as discretionary effort. Now, if you think about your own budget, there are certainly dollars that you have allocated for things like maybe your mortgage payment or car payment or your cabin home. These are things that you have allocated resources for. And then there are those things or those extra monies that don't necessarily have an allocation. And those things we would call our discretionary funds, which means at this point I can use those funds however I want, because they are not designated for any particular thing, and it is up to me when and how they get used. And so when we talk about human motivation, it's extremely important that we realize that people's discretionary effort is it encourages them to complete tasks. We can't make anyone complete a task. We can sign a contract, I can agree to pay someone, and they can still not do it. And so one of the things we have to understand is this concept of discretionary effort. And discretionary effort simply is the amount of effort, the quality of effort, the way, the attitude in which I complete a task that is given to me. And that is up to my discretion. For example, if I sign a contract to do a job, and I can do that job at 70%, or I can do it at 100%. And that 70% and that 100% is up to my discretion. Now, if I consistently do it at 70%, I may be in danger of breaching our contract, but at least I'm doing it, right? So I'm fulfilling the contract, but at its minimum. And so to get the maximum out of folks, we want to increase their discretionary effort. And so we'll talk about that concept as well. The importance of encouraging discretionary effort and how you increase that. I will say that a hostile work environment, that sexual harassment, that bigoted thinking, that prejudicial behavior, and ultimately discrimination decreases people's discretionary effort. It decreases their inclination to give their 100% best. And so our organizations, our clients, the people that we work with deserve to get the 100% best that all of our employees have to offer. And so if we're in the way of that, then we need to be analyzing ourselves. And so it's important that we increase people's discretionary effort, that we remind folks that they only do what they want to do. There is no such thing as procrastination. And lastly, that we analyze our own behavior to see if we're increasing people's discretionary effort, or in fact our behavior could be a blockage or a stoppage to their access or their willingness to give 100% of themselves and to be their very best, selves.
There is dignity and honor in being human. Oftentimes when we talk about diversity, we often talk about it in very esoteric ways. We talk about it in very emotional ways. But typically we never talk about what is the core and the root of what we currently call diversity. So what is dignity? Dignity implies that there is a self-pride as well as a pride that is exuded and offered to other people. So as a part of diversity, there is dignity. There is also honor. Oftentimes people confuse honor with respect. But honor is respecting at a very high level. Dignity, honor, and respect. There is dignity and honor in being human. What does it mean to be? None of us have done anything to be here on this planet. So we're not more worthy or less worthy than anyone else. We're just here to learn about how to be humans. And lastly, there is dignity and honor in being human. What does it mean to be human? Well, if we look up in the dictionary, we find something very interesting, that there are two definitions for the word human. One being the noun, having thumbs, having a big brain, and walking on two legs, human. But there's also the adjective of being human that describes how we should exist, the things we should do, the ways in which we should interact with each other. There is dignity and honor in being human.
Sexual harassment. It is unlawful to harass a person, an applicant or employee, because of that person's sex. Harassment can include sexual harassment or unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical harassment of a sexual nature. Harassment does not have to be of a sexual nature, however, and can include offensive remarks about a person's sex. For example, it is illegal to harass a woman by making offensive comments about women in general. Both victim and the harasser can be either a woman or a man, and the victim and harasser can be the same sex, although the law doesn't prohibit simple teasing, offhand comments, or isolated incidents that are not very serious. Harassment is illegal when it is so frequent or severe that it creates a hostile or offensive work environment, or when it results in an adverse employment decision, such as the victim being fired or demoted. The harasser can be the victim's supervisor, a supervisor in another area, a co-worker, or someone who is not an employee of the employer, such as a client or customer. Sexual harassment can occur in a variety of circumstances, including but not limited to the following. The victim as well as the harasser may be a woman or a man. The victim does not have to be of the opposite sex. The harasser can be the victim's supervisor, an agent of the employer, a supervisor in another area, a co-worker, or a non-employee. The victim does not have to be the person harassed but could be anyone affected by the offensive conduct. Unlawful sexual harassment may occur without economic injury to or discharge of the victim. The harasser's conduct must be unwelcome. Sexual harassment can occur in a variety of circumstances, including but not limited to the following. The victim as well as the harasser may be a woman or a man. The victim does not have to be of the opposite sex. The harasser can be the victim's supervisor, an agent of the employer, a supervisor in another area, a co-worker, or a non-employee. The victim does not have to be the person harassed but could be anyone affected by the offensive conduct. Unlawful sexual harassment may occur without economic injury to or discharge of the victim. The harasser's conduct must be unwelcome. Prevention is the best tool to eliminate sexual harassment in the workplace. Employers are encouraged to take steps necessary to prevent sexual harassment from occurring. They should clearly communicate to employees that sexual harassment will not be tolerated. They can do so by providing sexual harassment training to their employees and by establishing an effective complaint or grievance process and taking immediate and appropriate action when an employee complains. It is also unlawful to retaliate against an individual for opposing employment practices that discriminate based on sex or for filing a discrimination charge, testifying, or participating in any way in an investigation, proceeding, or litigation under Title VII. A hostile environment is one in which unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature creates an intimidating, offensive or disruptive work or academic environment for some members of the campus community. Examples of this conduct may include sexually explicit talk or emails, sexually provocative images, comments on physical attributes or inappropriate touching. The following example could be construed as hostile working environment sexual harassment. Mandy has a habit of leaning in close to Rachel and brushing her hand against her thighs when they are working at a shared workstation. Rachel has brushed her away and asked her to stop several times, but Mandy continues to annoy her. Mandy and Rachel are co-workers, and Mandy is not asking Rachel to exchange sexual favors for favorable working conditions, so her behavior is not quid pro quo sexual harassment. It could, however, be considered hostile work environment sexual harassment.
That certainly was interesting. Do you think that dignity, honor, or respect was given in that situation? If you walked in on that situation, how would you feel? If you were passing by that situation, what would you say? What impact do you think that interaction would have on the culture of respect? Would the behaviors in that scenario increase or decrease discretionary effort?
Most workplace or classroom sexual harassment is based on power and not on romance, although failed romances can lead to sexual harassment. At work and school, some people have authority over others. In these formal power relationships, subordinate employees or students do not always feel free to speak up to persons of higher authority who have control over their working conditions or academic opportunities. But sexual harassment is illegal, and holding a position of power or authority does not convey the right to break the law. In addition to formal power relationships, informal types of power, such as domination through physical size, loud voice, overbearing personality, superior or controlling attitude, or the harasser's position amongst peers, can be intimidating and threatening to some people, discouraging them from speaking up about unwelcome behavior.
Just like I like my employees on their knees.
That certainly was interesting. Do you think that dignity, honor, or respect was given in that situation? If you walked in on that situation, how would you feel? If you were passing by that situation, what would you say? What impact do you think that interaction would have on the culture of respect? Would the behaviors in that scenario increase or decrease discretionary effort?
It is important to understand that intent is not relevant in determining whether or not a behavior is sexual harassment. All that matters is the impact of the behavior on the work/study environment. We cannot measure intent, however impact can be measured. To say that it was just a joke or I did not mean it does not reduce or eliminate the impact on discretionary effort. Regardless of intent, the behavior will be judged on its impact upon the recipient. This fact is critically important. The statement, "I didn't mean anything by it," is not a valid defense of harassing behavior. Joey loves to tell funny stories and keep the spirit of good cheer alive in the lab. One morning, he spies Jessica looking a little tired and depressed. To cheer her up, he tells her a silly story with sexual innuendo. Jessica looks offended and moves away hurriedly. Joey didn't mean any harm, but what one person may intend as genuine friendship, even if in a clumsy way, may be perceived quite differently by another.
How was your weekend?
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah, mine was pretty good too. We went to the lake.
Well, I'm ready for spring. Yes.
Yeah, I could do some of it. Yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
That certainly was interesting. Do you think that dignity, honor, or respect was given in that situation? If you walked in on that situation, how would you feel? If you were passing by that situation, what would you say? What impact do you think that interaction would have on the culture of respect? Would the behaviors in that scenario increase or decrease discretionary effort?
The reasonable person standard is the measure used to determine the impact of sexual harassment. If an unwelcome behavior of a sexual nature causes someone to take offense, it will be judged whether or not it is sexual harassment as if interpreted by a reasonable person. This standard of a reasonable person has arisen from court attempts to interpret what behaviors should reasonably be considered sexual harassment. Since not everyone interprets behaviors in the same way, the courts find that, in order to be illegal, the conduct must be severely or pervasively offensive to a reasonable person in similar circumstances. Under this standard, one-time unwelcome behavior will seldom qualify as sexual harassment unless it is sufficiently severe as judged by a reasonable person.
That certainly was interesting. Do you think that dignity, honor, or respect was given in that situation? If you walked in on that situation, how would you feel? If you were passing by that situation, what would you say? What impact do you think that interaction would have on the culture of respect? Would the behaviors in that scenario increase or decrease discretionary effort?